Sarah Mitchell stood at her kitchen window, watching her 8-year-old daughter Emma play in the backyard with their golden retriever. The morning sun cast long shadows across the grass and everything seemed peaceful. But something had been bothering Sarah for weeks now. Emma had been acting strange around her stepfather, David, who had married Sarah just 6 months ago. David seemed like the perfect man when Sarah first met him at the grocery store 2 years earlier. He was charming, well-dressed, and showed genuine interest in both Sarah and Emma. After Sarah's messy divorce from Emma's biological father, she thought she had finally found someone who could give them both the stability they needed. David was patient with Emma, brought her gifts, and always spoke kindly to her. At least that's what Sarah saw. But lately Emma had been distant. She would hide behind Sarah whenever David entered the room. She stopped talking during dinner and would barely look at him. When Sarah asked what was wrong, Emma would just shrug and say she was tired. Sarah tried to convince herself it was just an adjustment period. After all, it couldn't be easy for a young girl to accept a new father figure. The previous evening had been particularly troubling. David had offered to help Emma with her homework while Sarah prepared dinner. From the kitchen, Sarah could hear David's voice getting louder and more frustrated. When she peeked into the living room, she saw Emma sitting very still at the table, her small hands gripping her pencil so tightly her knuckles were white. David was leaning over her, pointing at her math worksheet. "You're not trying hard enough, Emma," David said, his voice sharp. "This is simple addition. Even a 5-year-old could do this." Sarah started to intervene, but then David noticed her watching. His entire demeanor changed instantly. He straightened up, smiled warmly, and gently patted Emma's shoulder. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll figure this out together," he said in a completely different tone. Emma looked up at Sarah with wide, frightened eyes. But when Sarah smiled encouragingly, Emma just looked back down at her homework. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she pushed the feeling away. Maybe she was just being overprotective. That night, after David had gone to bed, Sarah found Emma sitting on her bedroom floor, quietly petting Max. The dog was unusually alert, his ears perked up and his body tense. Usually Max was the most relaxed dog in the world, happy to sleep anywhere and play with anyone. But lately he had been acting strangely too. "Emma, honey, is everything okay?" Sarah asked, sitting down beside her daughter. Emma continued stroking Max's fur and didn't look up. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby. You can ask me anything." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then in a voice so soft Sarah had to strain to hear, she said, "Do you think Max likes David?" Sarah looked at the dog, who was now staring intently at Emma's bedroom door as if listening for something. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "He just acts different when David is around. He doesn't wag his tail anymore. And yesterday, when David was helping me with homework, Max kept trying to get between us. David got mad and told Max to go away." Sarah felt that chill again. Max had always been an excellent judge of character. He loved everyone who came to their house, from the mailman to Sarah's friends. But now that Emma mentioned it, Sarah realized Max did act differently around David. The dog would watch him carefully, never fully relaxing when David was in the room. "Maybe Max is just adjusting too," Sarah said, though she didn't really believe it herself. Emma finally looked up at her mother, and Sarah was shocked to see tears in her daughter's eyes. "Mom, I need to tell you something, but I'm scared." Sarah's heart began to race. "Emma, you never have to be scared to tell me anything. I'm your mom, and I will always protect you no matter what." Emma opened her mouth to speak, but just then they heard David's footsteps in the hallway. Emma immediately stopped talking and looked terrified. Max's ears went flat against his head and he moved closer to Emma, positioning himself between her and the door. "Sarah? Emma, everything okay in there?" David called out. "Yes, we're fine," Sarah called back, her voice steadier than she felt. "Just having some girl talk." "All right, well, don't stay up too late. Emma has school tomorrow." They heard his footsteps retreat back to the master bedroom. Emma let out a shaky breath, and Sarah noticed her daughter's hands were trembling. Max whined softly and licked Emma's face. "Emma, what were you going to tell me?" Sarah whispered, but Emma shook her head quickly. "Nothing, Mom, I'm just tired." "Can Max sleep in my room tonight?" Sarah wanted to press further, but she could see Emma was too frightened to talk. "Of course, honey. Max can sleep wherever you want him to." As Sarah tucked Emma into bed with Max curled up beside her, she made a decision. Something was wrong, and she was going to find out what it was. She had ignored her instincts once before, during her marriage to Emma's father, and it had taken her years to rebuild their lives. She wasn't going to make that mistake again. The next morning, Sarah called in sick to work. She needed time to think and observe. David left for his job at the insurance company as usual, kissing Sarah goodbye and ruffling Emma's hair in what appeared to be a loving gesture. But Sarah noticed Emma flinch slightly when he touched her. After David left, Sarah sat Emma down at the kitchen table with hot chocolate and cookies. "Emma, yesterday you seemed like you wanted to tell me something important. I want you to know that you're safe with me. Whatever it is, we can handle it together." Emma stirred her hot chocolate slowly, not meeting her mother's eyes. Max sat right beside Emma's chair, his head resting on her lap. The dog hadn't left Emma's side since the night before. "Mom," Emma said quietly, "what if someone told you something, but you didn't believe them because the person seemed really nice to everyone else?" Sarah's blood ran cold. "Emma, if someone told me something important, I would believe them. Especially if that someone was you. You are the most important person in my world, and I trust you completely." Emma looked up then, and Sarah saw a mixture of relief and fear in her daughter's eyes. "Even if it was about David?" Sarah took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever her daughter was about to reveal, especially if it was about David. "Emma, has he done something to hurt you?" Before Emma could answer, Max suddenly jumped up, his ears alert. They heard a car door slam in the driveway. David was home early. Emma's face went white with fear when she heard David's car door slam. Max immediately moved to position himself between Emma and the front door, his body tense and alert. Sarah quickly stood up, her heart pounding, but tried to keep her voice calm. "It's okay, Emma, just act normal for now. We'll talk more later, I promise." Emma nodded quickly and grabbed her backpack, pretending to look through her school supplies. Max stayed close to her, his golden fur bristling slightly. Sarah had never seen their usually gentle dog react this way to anyone. David walked through the front door, looking surprised to see them still home. "Sarah, I thought you went to work already." "And Emma, shouldn't you be at school?" Sarah forced a smile. "I wasn't feeling well, so I called in sick. I was just about to drive Emma to school." David frowned slightly, and Sarah noticed his eyes darting between her and Emma. "You should have called me. I could have come home to take care of you." "That's sweet of you, but I'm feeling better now," Sarah replied, gathering her car keys. "Come on, Emma. Let's get you to school." As they headed toward the door, David stepped closer to Emma. "Have a good day at school, sweetheart," he said, reaching out to pat her head. Emma instinctively ducked away from his touch, and Sarah saw David's jaw clench for just a moment, before he smiled again. Max let out a low growl, so quiet that Sarah almost missed it. David's smile faltered as he looked down at the dog. "What's wrong with Max lately? He's been acting very strange." "Maybe he's just not feeling well either," Sarah said quickly, taking Emma's hand. "We'll see you tonight, David." During the drive to school, Emma was unusually quiet. Sarah glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror and saw her staring out the window, her small face troubled. "Emma, honey, I want you to know that whatever you need to tell me, I'm ready to listen. And I want you to know that I believe you no matter what." Emma met her mother's eyes in the mirror. "Promise you won't get mad?" "I promise, baby." "I could never be mad at you for telling me the truth." Emma took a shaky breath. "Mom, David isn't nice when you're not around. He says mean things to me, and he gets really angry about everything. Yesterday, when he was helping with my homework, he grabbed my arm really hard when I got an answer wrong. Look." Emma pushed up her sleeve, and Sarah nearly gasped. There were small finger-shaped bruises on Emma's upper arm. Sarah had to grip the steering wheel tighter to keep her hands from shaking. "Emma, why didn't you tell me this right away?" "Because he told me you wouldn't believe me. He said you love him now, and if I tried to cause trouble, you might send me away to live with Dad." Emma's voice broke. "I don't want to live with Dad, Mom. I want to stay with you." "But I'm scared of David." Sarah pulled into the school parking lot and turned around to face her daughter fully. "Emma, listen to me very carefully. I would never ever send you away. You are my daughter, and you will always come first. Always. And David had no right to touch you or say those things to you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "There's more, Mom. Sometimes at night I hear him walking around the house when he thinks everyone is sleeping. Last week I got up to get water and I saw him standing outside my bedroom door. When he saw me, he said he was just checking to make sure I was okay, but it felt scary." Sarah felt sick to her stomach. How had she missed all of this? How had she been so blind to what was happening to her own daughter? And Max knows something is wrong, Emma continued. Dogs can tell when people are bad, right? Max always tries to stay close to me when David is around. Yesterday, when David grabbed my arm, Max started barking and wouldn't stop until David let go. Sarah remembered the scene from the previous evening differently now. She had thought David was just being a caring stepfather, helping with homework. But Emma was describing something completely different. She thought about all the times she had seen David's demeanor change when he thought she wasn't watching. She had dismissed it as stress from work or adjustment to married life. But now she realized it was something much more sinister. Emma, I am so sorry I didn't see what was happening, but I see it now and I'm going to fix this. You don't have to be scared anymore. What are we going to do? Emma asked, wiping her eyes. I'm going to make sure you're safe and I'm going to make sure David can never hurt you again. But first, I need to ask you something very important. Has David ever touched you in ways that made you uncomfortable? In ways that felt wrong? Emma shook her head quickly. No, nothing like that. But Mom, I think he wants to. Sometimes I catch him looking at me in a way that makes my skin feel crawly. And he's always trying to get me alone. That's why Max stays so close to me. I think Max knows David is dangerous. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that David hadn't crossed that line, but terror at the thought that he might have been building up to it. She thought about all the times David had volunteered to help Emma with her bath, or offered to tuck her in when Sarah was busy. She had thought he was being helpful, but now she wondered if he had ulterior motives. Emma, you are so brave for telling me all of this, and you're right about Max. Dogs have incredible instincts about people. I should have paid more attention to how he was acting. They sat in the school parking lot for a few more minutes while Sarah tried to process everything her daughter had told her. Other parents were dropping off their children and everything looked so normal. But Sarah's world had just been turned upside down. Mom, what happens now? Emma asked quietly. Now, I'm going to take you to school and I want you to have a normal day. Don't worry about anything else right now. When I pick you up this afternoon, we're going to go somewhere safe while I figure out our next steps. Are we going to leave David? Sarah looked at her daughter's hopeful face and felt her heart break. Emma had been carrying this burden for weeks, maybe months, trying to protect her mother's happiness while living in fear. Yes, baby, we're going to leave David. I'm going to make sure he never hurts you again. As Sarah walked Emma to the school entrance, she was already making plans in her mind. She would go home and pack their most important belongings while David was at work. She would take pictures of Emma's bruises. She would call her lawyer. She would call the police. She would do whatever it took to protect her daughter. But first, she had to get through the next few hours without David suspecting anything. And she had to hope that Max would continue to be Emma's protector until she could get them both to safety. Sarah drove home with her mind racing, trying to figure out how she had missed so many warning signs. As she pulled into her driveway, she noticed David's car was gone. He must have left for work after all. This gave her some time to think and plan without having to pretend everything was normal. Max greeted her at the door, his tail wagging but his eyes alert. Sarah knelt down and hugged the golden retriever tightly. I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you, boy. You were trying to tell me something was wrong, weren't you? Max whined softly and licked her face as if he understood exactly what she was saying. Sarah had read once that dogs could sense human emotions and even detect when someone had bad intentions. She wished she had paid more attention to Max's behavior around David. Sarah went to her bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to calm down enough to think clearly. She needed to be smart about this. If David was capable of hurting Emma, he might be capable of much worse if he felt trapped or threatened. She couldn't just pack up and leave without a plan. She needed to protect both Emma and herself. She picked up her phone and called her sister Lisa, who lived 2 hours away in the next city. Lisa answered on the second ring. Sarah? Shouldn't you be at work? Lisa, I need your help. Something terrible has happened and I need somewhere safe for Emma and me to stay for a while. Of course. What's going on? You sound scared. Sarah told her sister everything Emma had revealed that morning. Lisa listened in shocked silence, occasionally making small sounds of disbelief and anger. Sarah, you need to call the police right now. David has been abusing Emma. I know, but I'm scared. What if they don't believe us? What if David convinces them that Emma is making it up? He's so charming to everyone else, and the bruises on her arm are small. What if that's not enough evidence? Then we make sure we have enough evidence, Lisa said firmly. Take pictures of Emma's bruises. Write down everything she told you, with dates and times if you can remember them. Call Emma's school and ask if they've noticed any changes in her behavior. And pack bags for both of you, but do it carefully so David doesn't suspect anything. Sarah felt some of her panic subside. Having a plan made her feel more in control. You're right. I can do this. I have to do this. I'm going to leave work early and drive over there. I should be at your house by 3 o'clock. Can you hold on until then? Yes, I think so. David usually doesn't come home until 6. After she hung up with Lisa, Sarah got to work. She found her digital camera and made sure it was charged. She would take pictures of Emma's bruises when she picked her up from school. Then she started gathering important documents: birth certificates, social security cards, passports, insurance papers, and bank statements. She put them all in a folder and hid it in her car. Next, she went through Emma's room, carefully selecting clothes and favorite toys. She had to make it look like normal laundry day in case David came home early. Max followed her around the house, staying close to her side as if he sensed something important was happening. As Sarah packed, she found herself remembering other incidents that she had dismissed or forgotten, like the time David had yelled at Emma for spilling juice on the kitchen table, calling her clumsy and stupid. Sarah had told him he was being too harsh, and David had immediately apologized, saying he was just having a bad day at work. Or the time Emma had started crying for no apparent reason during dinner, and David had told her to stop being a baby. When Sarah had comforted Emma, David had seemed annoyed that she was babying her daughter. There had been so many small red flags, but Sarah had been so grateful to have found someone who seemed to love both her and Emma that she had explained them all away. She had wanted so badly to believe that they could be a happy family that she had ignored her daughter's fear and Max's instincts. Around noon, Sarah's phone rang. It was David. Hi, honey. How are you feeling? Any better? Sarah forced her voice to sound normal. A little better, thanks. I've been resting. Good. Listen, I was thinking maybe I should come home for lunch to check on you. Sarah's heart started pounding. Oh, that's sweet of you, but I'm actually about to take a nap, and I wouldn't want you to catch whatever I have. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Okay, if you're sure. I'll see you tonight then. See you tonight, Sarah said, and hung up quickly. She realized her hands were shaking. Even talking to David on the phone made her feel nervous now. How had she shared a bed with this man? How had she trusted him with her daughter? Sarah spent the afternoon writing down everything Emma had told her, trying to remember specific dates and incidents. She also called Emma's school and spoke to her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Sarah Mitchell, Emma's mother. I was wondering if you've noticed any changes in Emma's behavior lately. Actually, yes, the teacher said. Emma has been much quieter than usual over the past few months. She used to be very outgoing and talkative, but lately she seems withdrawn. She's also been having trouble concentrating on her work. Is everything okay at home? Sarah's heart sank. Even Emma's teacher had noticed changes, but Sarah had been too distracted by her new marriage to see them. We're going through some changes at home. Thank you for letting me know. Mrs. Mitchell, if there's anything I can do to help Emma, please let me know. She's such a sweet little girl. At 2:30, Sarah drove to Emma's school to pick her up early. She told the office that Emma had a doctor's appointment. When Emma saw her mother waiting outside her classroom, she looked both relieved and worried. Is everything okay, Mom? Emma asked as they walked to the car. Everything is going to be okay, sweetheart. Your Aunt Lisa's coming to visit, and we're going to go stay with her for a while. Emma's face lit up. Really? Are we leaving David? Yes, baby. We're leaving David. In the car, Sarah took pictures of the bruises on Emma's arm with her digital camera. The finger marks were clearly visible, and Sarah felt sick looking at them. How dare anyone hurt her child? When they got home, Lisa was already there, waiting in her car in the driveway. She got out and hugged both Sarah and Emma tightly. Are you girls ready to get out of here? Lisa asked. More than ready, Sarah said. They quickly loaded their suitcases into Lisa's car. Max seemed to understand what was happening and jumped into the back seat without being asked. As they were about to leave, Emma suddenly grabbed her mother's arm. Mom, wait. I just remembered something important. Emma looked up at her mother with wide, serious eyes. Mom, last week when you went to the grocery store, David made me sit with him on the couch. He put his arm around me really tight so I couldn't move, and he told me things. Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. She knelt down to Emma's level, trying to keep her voice steady. What kind of things, sweetheart? He said that you didn't really love me as much as you loved him now. He said that if I ever told you lies about him, you would choose him over me and send me away. He said parents always choose their new husbands over their kids from old marriages. Lisa gasped, and Sarah had to grip Emma's shoulders to keep herself steady. The manipulation was even worse than she had imagined. David hadn't just been hurting Emma physically. He had been playing cruel mind games with her. And then he said something that really scared me. Emma continued. He said that someday, when I was older, I would understand what it meant to be a real family. He said he would teach me things that would make me grow up fast. I didn't understand what he meant, but the way he said it made me feel sick. Sarah stood up quickly, fighting the urge to be sick herself. She looked at Lisa, who had gone pale. They both understood exactly what David had been implying. That's why Max started staying so close to you, Sarah realized. Dogs can sense when someone has bad intentions toward children. Emma nodded. Max always gets between me and David now. And sometimes at night when David walks around the house, Max will wake up and go stand by my door. It's like he's guarding me. Sarah looked down at Max, who was sitting alertly beside Emma, his intelligent eyes watching their conversation. She had always known Max was a special dog, but she had never realized just how protective he was of Emma. The dog had been trying to warn her for weeks, and she had finally understood. We need to get out of here right now, Lisa said urgently. If David is capable of saying those things to Emma, there's no telling what he might do if he finds out you're leaving him. As they finished loading the car, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from David. Feeling better? I might come home early to surprise you with dinner. Sarah showed the message to Lisa, who immediately started the car engine. We need to go now. They drove quickly through town, all of them watching nervously for David's car. Emma sat in the back seat with Max, holding on to the dog tightly. The golden retriever seemed to understand the urgency of the situation and stayed perfectly still, alert and protective. Mom, Emma said quietly as they drove through the countryside toward Lisa's house. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was so scared you wouldn't believe me. Sarah turned around to look at her daughter. Emma, you have nothing to apologize for. You were just a little girl trying to deal with a very scary situation. I'm the one who should be sorry. I should have noticed what was happening. I should have protected you better. Max tried to tell you, Emma said, stroking the dog's fur. Remember how he stopped sleeping on your bed after you married David? And how he started sleeping in my room instead? He was trying to protect me. Sarah remembered that change in Max's behavior, but she had thought the dog was just adjusting to having a new person in the house. Now she realized Max had sensed danger and had positioned himself as Emma's guardian. Dogs have incredible instincts, Lisa said from the front seat. They can often tell when someone is dangerous long before humans figure it out. Max deserves a medal for keeping Emma safe. As they drove, Sarah called her lawyer from her cell phone. She explained the situation and made an appointment to see him the next morning. She also called the police and reported David for child abuse. The officer she spoke with was kind and understanding, and he told her she had done the right thing by removing Emma from the dangerous situation. We'll need to interview Emma and take photos of her injuries, the officer explained. But we can do that at your sister's house if that makes Emma more comfortable. When they finally arrived at Lisa's house, Emma seemed to relax for the first time in months. Lisa had a big backyard where Max could run around, and Emma immediately went outside to play with him. Sarah watched through the window as her daughter laughed and played, looking like a normal 8-year-old again instead of a scared, traumatized child. She looks different already, Lisa observed, standing beside Sarah. More like herself. I can't believe I put her through this, Sarah said, tears starting to flow. I was so lonely after my divorce, and David seemed so perfect. He was charming and attentive, and he seemed to genuinely care about Emma. How could I have been so wrong about him? Abusers are often very good at hiding their true nature, Lisa said gently. They know how to be charming when they need to be, and you're not the first parent to be fooled by someone like that. The important thing is that you listened when Emma finally found the courage to tell you the truth. That evening, as Sarah tucked Emma into the guest bedroom at Lisa's house, Emma looked up at her with eyes that were already brighter than they had been in months. Mom, I'm glad we left. I feel safe here. We're going to stay safe, Sarah promised. David will never hurt you again. Max curled up on the bed beside Emma, just as he had been doing at home. But now Sarah understood that he wasn't just being a loving pet. He was being a protector, a guardian angel in the form of a golden retriever. As Sarah turned off the lights, she heard Emma whisper, "Good boy, Max, thank you for keeping me safe." Sarah stood in the hallway for a moment, overwhelmed with gratitude for the dog who had tried so hard to warn her about David's true nature. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations with lawyers and police officers. There would be court proceedings and the challenge of rebuilding their lives again. But tonight, for the first time in months, both Emma and Max could sleep peacefully, knowing they were all finally safe. Sarah's phone buzzed with several angry text messages from David, who had come home to find the house empty. She turned off her phone without reading them and went to her own room. Whatever David had to say, she didn't want to hear it. She had heard enough lies from him to last a lifetime. In the morning, they would start the process of making sure David could never hurt Emma or any other child again. The next morning, Sarah woke up to find Emma already outside playing with Max in Lisa's backyard. For the first time in months, she could hear her daughter laughing. The sound filled Sarah's heart with both joy and sadness. Joy because Emma felt safe enough to be happy again, and sadness because she realized how long it had been since she had heard that carefree laughter. Detective Maria Santos arrived at Lisa's house at 10 o'clock. She was a kind woman with gentle eyes who specialized in cases involving children. She sat down with Emma in Lisa's living room, with Max lying protectively at Emma's feet. "Emma, I know this might be scary to talk about, but I need to hear about what David did to you," Detective Santos said softly. "You're very brave for telling your mom the truth, and now I need you to be brave one more time so we can make sure David doesn't hurt you or anyone else." Emma looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Then Emma began to tell her story again, this time with more details. She told the detective about the bruises, the angry words, the threats, and the frightening comments David had made about teaching her things when she got older. Max seemed to sense the seriousness of the conversation. He stayed perfectly still beside Emma, occasionally lifting his head to nuzzle her hand when her voice started to shake. The detective noticed this behavior and made notes about it. "Emma, your dog Max seems very protective of you. Has he always been like this around David?" Emma shook her head. "No, Max used to be friendly with everyone. But after David moved in, Max changed. He would growl whenever David got too close to me, and he started sleeping in my room every night. Sometimes when David would grab me or yell at me, Max would bark and try to get between us." Detective Santos looked thoughtfully at Max. Dogs have incredible instincts about people. They can often sense danger before humans do. It sounds like Max was trying to protect you. After taking Emma's statement, Detective Santos photographed the bruises on Emma's arm. Though they were starting to fade, they were still clearly visible. She also took pictures of Max, noting in her report that the family dog had shown protective behavior that was consistent with the child's claims of abuse. "What happens now?" Sarah asked as the detective prepared to leave. "We'll file charges against David for child abuse. With Emma's testimony, the physical evidence, and the supporting observations from her teacher and even her dog's protective behavior, we have a strong case. I'll also recommend that a restraining order be issued to keep David away from both of you." That afternoon, Sarah met with her lawyer, Robert Chen, while Emma stayed at Lisa's house with Max. Mr. Chen reviewed all the evidence and assured Sarah that she had grounds, not only for divorce but also for full custody of Emma with no visitation rights for David. "The fact that you acted quickly to protect Emma when you learned about the abuse will work in your favor," Mr. Chen explained. "Courts look very favorably on parents who put their children's safety first, and the evidence you've gathered is quite compelling. What about David? Will he try to fight this?" "He might, but men like David usually rely on their ability to charm and manipulate people. In a courtroom with evidence and witnesses, that charm doesn't work as well. Plus, if he's convicted of child abuse, he'll have bigger problems to worry about than custody arrangements." When Sarah returned to Lisa's house, she found Emma and Max playing fetch in the backyard. Emma was running around, carefree and happy, while Max chased after a tennis ball. It was such a normal, beautiful sight that Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "Mom," Emma called out when she saw her. "Look how fast Max can run." As if to demonstrate, Max came bounding over with the tennis ball in his mouth. He dropped it at Sarah's feet and wagged his tail, looking proud of himself. Sarah knelt down and hugged the golden retriever. "Thank you, Max," she whispered in his ear. "Thank you for protecting my baby when I couldn't." That evening, Sarah received a call from Detective Santos. "Sarah, I wanted to update you on David's case. We went to arrest him this afternoon, but he wasn't at his office or at your house. His coworkers said he left work early yesterday and hasn't been back. Do you have any idea where he might go? Sarah felt a chill of fear. No, I don't know. What does this mean? It means he probably knows you've left him and suspects that charges might be filed. Don't worry. We've issued a warrant for his arrest and we'll find him. In the meantime, I want you to stay exactly where you are. Don't go back to your house and don't go anywhere alone. After Sarah hung up, she realized her hands were shaking. What if David tried to find them? What if he was angry enough to hurt them? Lisa noticed her distress. Hey, it's going to be okay. David doesn't know where I live, and even if he did, we have Max here to protect us. As if he had heard his name, Max came over and sat beside Sarah, leaning his warm body against her legs. She petted his soft fur and felt some of her anxiety fade. Max had been protecting Emma for months without any training or instruction. He had simply known that David was dangerous and had positioned himself as Emma's guardian. If David did somehow find them, Sarah had no doubt that Max would defend them with his life. That night, as Sarah was getting ready for bed, Emma appeared in her doorway with Max beside her. Mom, can Max sleep in your room tonight? I think he wants to protect both of us now. Sarah smiled and patted the bed. Of course, sweetheart. Max can sleep wherever he wants. He's earned it. Max jumped up on the bed and positioned himself between Sarah and the door, just as he had been doing in Emma's room. His ears were alert, and Sarah could tell he was listening for any unusual sounds. Even in this safe house 2 hours away from David, Max was still on guard duty. As Sarah drifted off to sleep, she felt grateful beyond words for the golden retriever who had tried so hard to warn her about David's true nature. Max had been the hero in this story, the one who had never stopped protecting Emma even when the adults around her had failed to see the danger. The next morning, Detective Santos called with news. We found David. He was arrested at a motel about 50 miles from your town. He had packed bags in his car like he was planning to run. But we got him. Sarah felt a huge weight lift from her shoulders. What happens now? He'll be charged with child abuse, and there will likely be additional charges related to his threats and psychological abuse of Emma. With his attempt to flee, the judge will probably deny bail. Emma won't have to worry about seeing him again for a very long time. When Sarah told Emma the news, her daughter's face lit up with relief. Really? He can't come after us anymore? That's right, baby. David is going to jail and he'll never be able to hurt you again. Emma hugged Max tightly. Did you hear that, Max? We're really safe now. You don't have to guard me anymore. But Max continued to stay close to Emma throughout the day, as if he understood that his job as her protector wasn't quite finished yet. Sarah realized that it would probably take time for all of them to truly feel secure again. The trauma of living with David would take time to heal. That afternoon, Sarah called Emma's school to explain the situation and arrange for Emma to transfer to a new school near Lisa's house. She wanted to give Emma a completely fresh start, away from any reminders of their life with David. As the sun set on their third day at Lisa's house, Sarah watched Emma and Max playing in the backyard again. Emma was teaching Max new tricks and the dog was happily performing them, his tail wagging constantly. They both looked relaxed and joyful in a way that Sarah hadn't seen since before David had entered their lives. You know, Lisa said, joining Sarah at the window. I think Max deserves a special reward for everything he did. Maybe a new toy or a special dinner? Sarah smiled. I think Max deserves a lot more than that. He saved my daughter's life. If he hadn't kept protecting her and trying to warn me, I might never have realized what was happening. Emma might have suffered much worse abuse. Dogs really are amazing, aren't they? They love so unconditionally and they have such pure instincts about people. Sarah nodded, watching as Max gently took a treat from Emma's hand. I'll never ignore a dog's instincts again. Max knew David was dangerous from the very beginning. I just wish I had been smart enough to listen to him sooner. As darkness fell, the three of them, Sarah, Emma, and Max, settled into Lisa's living room to watch a movie together. For the first time in months, Emma curled up on the couch without constantly looking toward the door in fear. Max lay on the floor beside the couch, relaxed but still alert, still protecting the little girl who had become his most important responsibility. Sarah realized that while their ordeal with David was far from over, there would be court dates and therapy sessions, and the long process of healing. The worst was behind them. They were safe, they were together, and they had Max watching over them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they could finally rest peacefully. 3 weeks later, Sarah and Emma had settled into a new routine at Lisa's house. Emma was thriving at her new school, where her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was understanding about the situation and gave Emma extra support when she needed it. Max had become something of a celebrity at the school pickup line, where other children would ask to pet the hero dog who had protected Emma. The court proceedings were moving forward smoothly. David had been denied bail after the judge learned about his attempt to flee and the nature of the charges against him. His lawyer had tried to argue that Emma's story was unreliable because she was just a child. But the physical evidence, the testimony from Emma's teacher, and even the documented protective behavior of Max had created a compelling case. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a child psychologist who specialized in abuse cases, had been working with Emma twice a week. She had also interviewed Max and observed his behavior with Emma, noting in her report that the dog's protective instincts had likely prevented more serious abuse from occurring. Emma is remarkably resilient, Dr. Walsh told Sarah after one of their sessions. The fact that she had Max protecting her during the worst of the abuse actually helped minimize some of the psychological trauma. She never felt completely alone or helpless because she had her canine guardian with her. Sarah was amazed by her daughter's strength. Emma had nightmares sometimes, and she still flinched when men she didn't know tried to talk to her, but overall she was healing well. Having Max by her side seemed to give her confidence and comfort that nothing else could provide. One afternoon, Detective Santos called with an update about David's case. "I have some interesting news, Sarah. After David's arrest, we started investigating his background more thoroughly. It turns out this isn't his first offense." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean?"
David was married before, about 8 years ago.
His first wife had a young daughter from a previous relationship. The wife filed for divorce and got a restraining order against David, claiming he had been abusive to both her and her daughter. The case was settled out of court, and the records were sealed, which is why this didn't come up in a regular background check. Sarah was horrified. So Emma wasn't his first victim? Unfortunately, no. But the good news is that his first wife has agreed to testify in his current case. With 2 separate families coming forward with similar stories, David's lawyer is already talking about a plea bargain. He knows he can't win this case at trial. What kind of plea bargain? Probably 5 to 7 years in prison, plus mandatory registration as a child abuser and psychological counseling. He would also be prohibited from living in any household with minor children. Essentially, he'd never be able to hurt another child again. When Sarah shared this news with Emma, her daughter's reaction surprised her. Instead of being upset about David's previous victims, Emma seemed relieved that other people would be safe from him. "I'm glad his first family is helping to stop him," Emma said, hugging Max. "Maybe if more people tell the truth about bad people, other kids won't get hurt." Sarah was struck by her daughter's wisdom and compassion. Even after everything David had put her through, Emma was thinking about protecting other children rather than seeking revenge. That weekend, Sarah made a decision that had been weighing on her mind for days. She called her old house and arranged to go back with Lisa to collect the rest of their belongings. She had been putting off this trip, but she knew they couldn't stay at Lisa's house forever. And she didn't want to leave their memories and important possessions behind. When they arrived at the house, Sarah felt a mixture of sadness and relief. This had been her dream home, the place where she thought she would build a new life with David. But now it just felt empty and tainted by bad memories. Max immediately ran through the house, sniffing every room as if checking to make sure David was really gone. In Emma's room, he spent extra time near the closet and under the bed, places where Emma used to hide when she was scared. It was as if Max was performing one final security check of their old home. As they packed up Emma's remaining toys and clothes, Emma found a drawing she had made several months earlier. It showed their family: Sarah, Emma, David, and Max. But in the drawing, Max was positioned directly between Emma and David, almost like a barrier. Even in her artwork, Emma had unconsciously shown how Max protected her. "Look, Mom," Emma said, holding up the drawing. "Even when I drew this, I knew Max was keeping me safe from David." Sarah studied the picture and felt tears in her eyes. Her 8-year-old daughter had been processing the danger she was in through her artwork, and even then, she had recognized Max as her protector. They found several more drawings that told the same story. In every picture that included David, Max was either between him and Emma or positioned protectively near Emma. Sarah realized that Emma's subconscious mind had been screaming warnings that the adults around her had failed to hear. In the master bedroom, Sarah packed up her own belongings quickly, wanting to spend as little time as possible in the room she had shared with David. But as she was gathering jewelry from her dresser, she found something that made her blood run cold. Hidden behind her jewelry box was a small digital camera that didn't belong to her. Sarah's hands shook as she turned it on and scrolled through the photos. There were dozens of pictures of Emma. Emma getting dressed, Emma taking a bath, Emma sleeping in her bed. All taken without Emma's knowledge. Sarah immediately called Detective Santos, who instructed her to leave the camera exactly where she found it and get out of the house immediately. "This is evidence of a much more serious crime," the detective explained. "We'll need to get a search warrant and go through that house thoroughly. There might be more evidence of David's predatory behavior." As they drove away from the house for what Sarah knew would be the last time, Emma asked, "Mom, are you okay? You look scared." Sarah didn't want to tell Emma about the hidden camera, at least not yet. "I'm just glad we're out of there, sweetheart. And I'm glad we have Max with us." Max seemed to sense Sarah's distress and moved closer to her in the car, resting his head on her shoulder. The dog had not only protected Emma from David's abuse, but had also helped prevent something much worse from happening. Sarah shuddered to think what David might have escalated to if Max hadn't been there as a constant deterrent. That evening, as they settled back into Lisa's house, Sarah watched Emma playing with Max in the living room. Her daughter was building a fort out of couch cushions, and Max was helping by carrying smaller pillows in his mouth. They were both laughing and having fun, and Sarah realized that despite everything they had been through, they were going to be okay. The nightmare with David was almost over, and their real life, their safe, happy life, was just beginning. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the kitchen of their new apartment watching Emma and Max play in their small backyard. The apartment wasn't as big as their old house, but it felt warm and safe in a way their previous home never had. Emma was building an obstacle course for Max using cardboard boxes and jump ropes, and the golden retriever was enthusiastically participating in her game. The court case had concluded 3 weeks earlier. David had accepted a plea bargain and been sentenced to 8 years in prison. He would also be required to register as a child offender and undergo extensive psychological counseling. The judge had been particularly disturbed by the hidden camera evidence, which had revealed the true extent of David's predatory behavior, the fact that this defendant was systematically documenting this child's private moments shows a level of premeditation and criminal intent that goes far beyond simple abuse, the judge had said during sentencing. This court is satisfied that the sentence ensures Mr. David Morrison will not have the opportunity to harm any other children for a very long time. Emma had not been required to testify in court, thanks to the overwhelming physical evidence and the testimony from David's first wife. Dr. Walsh had determined that testifying might be traumatic for Emma, and the prosecutor had agreed that they had enough evidence to convict without putting her through that ordeal. The most surprising witness in the case had been Dr. Amanda Foster, an animal behavior expert who testified about Max's protective actions. She explained to the court how dogs can detect threats to children and will instinctively try to protect them. This dog's behavior is consistent with what we see in working dogs trained to protect children, Dr. Foster had testified. Max exhibited classic guardian behavior, positioning himself between the child and the threat, sleeping in the child's room to provide protection during vulnerable hours, and becoming agitated when the abuser was alone with the child. His instincts likely prevented more serious abuse from occurring. The prosecutor had called Max a four-legged hero in his closing arguments, and the story had been picked up by local news stations. Suddenly, Max was famous as the dog who had helped expose a child abuser and protect his young owner. Sarah had been contacted by several organizations asking if she would be willing to share their story to help other families recognize the signs of abuse. She had agreed to speak at a few events, always emphasizing the importance of listening to children and paying attention to the behavior of family pets. Dogs don't lie, she would tell audiences. They don't have hidden motives or complex emotions that cloud their judgment. When a dog that's usually friendly starts acting protective or aggressive around someone, That's a warning worth taking seriously. Emma had also spoken to a few groups of children, with Dr. Walsh's support. She talked about the importance of telling trusted adults when someone made them feel scared or uncomfortable, and about how Max had helped her feel brave enough to tell the truth. Max couldn't talk, but he could show me that someone was there to protect me, Emma had told a group of second graders at her new school. Even when I was scared to tell my mom what was happening, Max made sure I knew I wasn't alone. Their new life was busy but peaceful. Sarah had found a job at a non-profit organization that helped families affected by domestic violence. Her experience with David had given her unique insight into how abusers manipulated their victims, and she was able to help other women recognize warning signs she had missed in her own relationship. Emma was thriving at her new school. She had made several close friends and was back to being the outgoing, confident child she had been before David entered their lives. She still had Max sleep in her room most nights, but Dr. Walsh assured Sarah this was normal and healthy. The bond between Emma and Max had been strengthened by their shared trauma, and it provided Emma with a sense of security that was helping her heal. Max had received several honors for his heroic behavior. The local police department had given him an honorary K9 badge, and the ASPCA had recognized him with their Hero Dog Award. But the recognition Max seemed to enjoy most was the constant stream of children who wanted to pet him and hear his story. He seemed to understand that he was special, and he carried himself with quiet dignity that made Sarah proud. One evening, as Sarah was tucking Emma into bed, her daughter looked up at her with serious eyes. "Mom, I've been thinking about something. Do you think Max knew David was bad from the very first day he met him?" Sarah considered the question carefully. Looking back, she remembered that Max had been unusually reserved around David from their very first meeting. At the time, she had thought the dog was just being cautious around a stranger. But now she wondered if Max's instincts had been warning her all along. "I think Max probably sensed something wasn't right about David from the beginning," Sarah said. "Dogs are much better at reading people than humans are sometimes. I'm glad we listened to Max when we finally understood what he was trying to tell us," Emma said, reaching over to pet the golden retriever, who was already curled up on his usual spot on her bed. "Me too, sweetheart. Max saved us both." As Sarah turned off the lights and headed to her own room, she reflected on how much their lives had changed. The past year had been the most difficult of her life, but it had also taught her valuable lessons about trust, intuition, and the importance of putting her daughter's safety above everything else. She had learned to listen not just to Emma's words, but to her behavior and her fears. She had learned to pay attention to the subtle signs that something was wrong, even when everything appeared normal on the surface. And most importantly, she had learned to trust the instincts of those she loved, both human and canine. In her own bedroom, Sarah looked out the window at the quiet street below. Their new neighborhood was safe and friendly, full of families with children and dogs. Emma had already made friends with several kids on their block, and Max had become the unofficial mascot of the local playground. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. Emma had a piano recital next week, and Sarah was planning to ask for a promotion at work. They were building a new life together, one day at a time, with Max as their faithful companion and protector. As Sarah drifted off to sleep, she could hear Max's gentle breathing from Emma's room next door. The sound was comforting and reassuring. Their golden guardian was on duty, keeping watch over the little girl who had become his most precious responsibility. The nightmare with David was over, but the love and protection that Max had shown Emma would last forever. They were safe, they were together, and they were home.